What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and I wanted to provide a little update on the Native Hammer with the Terrova installed. So I got a couple of questions, I have a little bit more feedback, some updates. I've had a chance to have this kayak out a couple times and get a little bit better of an idea of my lasting impressions on where I think this kayak excels and where this kayak doesn't excel. I'm going to be answering the questions that I got from you guys from YouTube and Facebook, and try and answer as much as I can on the kayak itself. As always, subscribe to the channel, like this video, hit us up on Hooked on Yak Fishing on our Facebook group. If you haven't joined already, check us out. We provide a lot of good information. It's a good platform for creators to share their experiences. All right, guys, so I appreciate you guys watching the video, taking the time to review what I have to say. At the end of the day, this is an opinion, my opinion. You may have a different opinion, and that's okay. Best advice that anybody can give you as far as kayaks go is go out there and get in this kayak yourself and check it out. My experience is going to be a little bit different than your experience versus the next guy. So take everything that I say with a grain of salt if you can. But again, thank you for your support and appreciate it. Check it out. All right, good morning, guys. So I have a couple follow-up questions on the Hammer and the Terrova motor. So I'm going to answer those for you right now, basically. A couple of the questions that I've got is, can you run the Terrova motor in the deployed or in the stowed position and the pedals in the stowed position? Is there room to have them all the way forward? So I'm going to show you that right now. So the X-Range Propel Drive has two different stow methods, basically, right? So this is their kind of ready to deploy method, and then you have this other method where you can push it up, right, all the way. So you can see if you have the pedals positioned correctly that they're not going to hit. Okay, so if this pedal is down and this pedal is up, the motor is not going to hit. There's a gap there, so you have plenty of room for that. Most people are not running it in this configuration, right? The motor is either going to be down and forward and the pedal is going to be in the system, but for transporting purposes, you may have to do this. So again, this works, not a problem, which was one of my concerns, you know, when I first bought this kayak as well. So another question that I got was, you know, can you use the Terrova with the pedal drive system in it? Yes, you can. I have videos basically of the Terrova running full speed with the pedal system into it. You can also remove the drive completely and not have to have the drive in and run the Terrova if you prefer that. You have a bunch of different options, right? So something to keep in mind about the drive, and it stays really dry, you know, as you're doing this. This is one of the biggest, you know, benefits of this kayak. You know, you don't have to have this drive in. You can take the drive out, leave it in your truck, lock it up, run your Terrova all day long by itself. This plate system stays in the drive or the drive port, so it's not an issue. Okay, so the other question I got was, is this going to kick up like an Old Town if I hit something with the drive? Unfortunately, the answer is no. Okay, so this drive is not meant to kick up like the Old Town. A lot of people will leave their box unclipped and it'll just kick up because it's all one piece. The problem with the X-Range is that when this prop goes down in here, can't do it because I'm in my trailer, this bracket locks into this piece right here. Okay, so in order to put the plate back on, this whole propel unit has to be forward and locked in. Okay, so that's number one. That's why it's not going to kick up. Number two, when you run this pod without this cavitation plate, or without the pod plate cover, you're going to get a lot of cavitation, you're going to get a lot of water kick up, you're going to get a lot of different stuff. Okay, so that's something you'll have to deal with. Now, can you put the drive and just barely have it in there, you can, but every time you pedal, it's going to shift back and forth and potentially come out on you. You're not going to get good full rotations. You're not going to get good prop turn. It's just not really designed like that, okay? So I really wouldn't recommend it if that's something you're worried about. If you're worried about hitting oyster bars and oyster reefs and, just anything else, rocks for that matter, then this may not be the kayak for you. You may want to stick with the Old Town. Does it run shallow? Yes, it runs just as shallow as any other kayak that I've been in. It's not an issue. Some people have complained about the back where the rudder is, hitting the bottom and dragging against rocks and stuff like that. So, some of the cons to the kayak that I have found is that if you have the Terrova, and again, this is specific to how I had the kayak set up. If you put a Terrova on the front, you are going to get a lot of weight in the front, and that nose is going to go down, okay? It's not a problem with water on the deck, all right? That's not a concern in this kayak. That's one of the biggest pros of this kayak. But what I will tell you is there was numerous times I came home and I got into my battery compartment and found that I had water inside of my hatch. All right, now I did not take water over the bow. I did not take water in here. I don't know if you saw that. I didn't get any water in here, but I did have water in there. And if you look close, the way that this is set up is this is just a cover with a scupper plug underneath that goes directly down to your transducer. Now, for the smaller guys that are not heavy and are not running a trolling motor on the front of the kayak and aren't standing, you may not get water in there. My buddy Ron runs a Hammer. He has a Newport NK180 on the back. He has never got water in the front. He's also about 175 pounds, so he's about 25 pounds lighter than me, has less weight in the front of the kayak than I do. So that's attributed to basically all the heavy weight in the front. So if you're not running a lot of weight in the front, that's not going to be a concern for you. It's just if you run a trolling motor in front, that's what you're going to have. All right. So if you're running a Terrova and you have it on the trailer, one of the things that's going to end up annoying you is access to your hatch. Right? You're going to have to deploy this motor every single time you want access to the hatch, because the hatch flips up and flips forward. So something to take in consideration. For me, I can just, if it's on this trailer, I can take it, flip my motor forward and lean it on the trailer, open up my hatch. But that's just an extra step of something you have to do every single time. One of the other downfalls of having the Terrova on the front is your cables are kind of all in the front with you. Your stow and deploy cables are still going to kind of be in the way. Probably not your depressed cable, because it's ran right on the side of the kayak and that's cleaned up, but you still have this pole cable that you have to end up putting somewhere, and that can get wrapped up and it can be a pain in the butt. So if you're not willing to kind of have that cable, wrapped up or somewhere on your front deck, then that might not be for you. Again, very minor issue, depends on how you fish, right? The total weight with the battery that I was running, the Dakota Lithium 135, and the trolling motor was about 65 pounds total. That's a lot of extra weight to the kayak. Now, this kayak has a huge capacity for weight. It wasn't a problem of a weight distribution problem. I'm just telling you, that's a lot of weight to add to your kayak. The other thing with the Terrova on the front is you have to be prepared to kind of be thrown left and right at all times, just like if you were operating a trolling motor on a boat and you did not drop the power down and you hit left or right. The kayak doesn't have that primary stability, so it has a tendency, if you're not paying attention, and this is all by fault of my own, not the kayak or the motor, that it will throw you back into your seat, basically, if you're standing. So you have to be careful of that. You have to get used to that. Ever. Par for the course for today. Especially if you're spot locking and standing, you got to be really careful of that motor wanting to do what it wants to do, especially if you're in a high wind situation. You're going to have that trolling motor kicked up a little bit. And, you know, if you've had a Minn Kota on any other boat or anything else, you know that they can be kind of erratic at some point. So that's something you have to take in consideration when you have the Terrova on the front. My last outing, I fell back in my kayak probably 5 or 6 times because I was just focused on fishing so much. I forgot to turn the power down, went to turn, and that's what happened. The other downfall of having the Terrova on the front is basically you don't know what you're going to hit until you hit it. So you can hit stumps. You know, you can raise the motor a little bit so you're not hitting stumps, just like you would hit a stump in the drive with the same. But usually with the Terrova, the motor's down a little bit further than the drive, which means you can't get as shallow sometimes. Of course, you can raise the shaft and the motor up to make it, barely sit out of the water, but your speed is going to be affected by that then. And then you have to constantly adjust it. Not that big of a deal if you fish one spot of water, but if you're fishing multiple different types of water, we're going from rivers to lakes to the ocean, it may be, annoying for you to have to keep changing that up. I hit a couple stumps with the motor. It didn't affect the motor at all. It took it just like, it would out of a boat, not a big deal. But I did get hung up a couple times, which posed a problem for me getting back off. And be that the motor is so far forward and you have to kind of climb forward to kind of get yourself off that stuff. It's a little bit more difficult if you have to climb forward and do that. The top speed with this was anywhere from like 3, I don't want to say top speed because the range of speed was anywhere from 3 to 4.2, I think. So that's not very fast, but if you're not looking for speed, it's not an issue. I wanted to be able to go from point A to point B faster, so this doesn't really work for me as well as I thought it would. I don't use the spot lock function very much at all, so for me it's kind of a null benefit. It is a benefit. Spot lock does work pretty good, especially if you're sitting on a point and kind of at a lake, but I really didn't need it. So again, it's kind of what you want to do with the trolling motor, the best option. Speed is definitely way slower than the NK 180. Ron blew me out of the water. Basically, he would take off and, I'd be playing catch up the whole day, trying to keep up with that motor. And it's just a difference of, the functionality of what that motor is meant to do. So that's pretty much the Terrova. The nice thing about the Terrova is you can leave it on there. Right? You don't have to take it on and off every single time. Well, the Newport and the Torqeedo, you have to take off and on each time. So there's pros and cons of each thing. So a couple of the other cons of the Hammer while I'm here kind of really drove me nuts over the last couple of trips was it's not really easy to move the seat back and forth if you have to move it. Right? Especially if you're sitting. It's easy if you're out of the kayak, but if you're sitting, it's really wonky to move it. And I could never get comfortable in this seat. I don't know what it is. I could not get comfortable in the seat. I had the locking mechanism on it. Just never felt right. And I don't know if it's because you're sitting in a higher position when you're pedaling or what it is, but I just didn't feel comfortable. I love the riggability of the kayak. I love how easy it is to go, from the front to the back. Inside the hole, wires completely cleaned up, nothing on your deck, not a big issue, which was really nice. The back battery hatch is nice. It keeps your battery away from everything. One of the biggest annoyances I have on this kayak is the rails. All right, there's tons of rail space, but again, in order to use them, you have to go from the very front or the very back and take everything out and put everything back in. I mean, even down to these things. If you want to get something behind them, right? Especially if you're screwing stuff down like this. If you're doing screws, you're gonna be annoyed, right? Again, once you rig the kayak up and you don't change anything, not that big of a deal. Other thing that I didn't really care about on the drive was the alignment of having to align this every single time to pull it out. It's an extra step to pull the plate out. I didn't really think it would bug me. It did not bug me for the first couple trips. The more I did it, the more I was like, this is kind of annoying. I can just pull my Old Town drive straight up and I don't have to worry about it. Or I can pull my Hobie fins up and I can just pull them right out and pull them back in, push them back in. So again, it's about personal preference. At the end of the day, would I recommend this kayak? Absolutely. 100% I would. I think it's an awesome kayak. Is it for me? No, it's not. I have a really bad leg injury that I've been nursing for the last 2 years. And for me, I need that primary stability when I'm standing. I didn't think that it was going to bother me long term, but the more that I fished with a trolling motor in the front, the more I had a problem with it. And when I would come off the water, I'd be really sore on that leg. Whereas like if you're in a Titan or a Hobie Pro Angler or even the Old Town 120, that primary stability is a lot better. It's a lot slower of a boat, but the stability's there. So there's always a trade-off with this stuff. I would recommend this kayak, especially to guys under 200 pounds. I think it's probably a perfect kayak for them. Riggability, the way that you can just, do different things. The other thing was a big miss for me was the paddle holder for the paddle. I don't really like using these rear paddle clips because then it blocks your rod tubes. It's just an awkward layout on this setup. The Tankwell to do the black pack was awesome. Plenty of riggability room. The back rail's nice. The handles are nice. Being able to line your motor straight up on the kayak, that's nice. So at the end of the day, again, the best advice anybody can give you, go get in the kayak yourself, try it out a couple times, and see if you really like it. And do a pros and cons approach to it. That's what I do with all my kayaks. I list the pros and I list the cons, and then I have to list what my priority is, what I think is the most important. Okay, and that's different for everybody, right? I'm sure I'm going to get some hate on this saying, oh, you didn't give it a chance or you didn't do this. I've been in kayaks for 15 years. I know what works for me. I know what doesn't work for me. So it's easy for me to make a decision to move away from a kayak or get into a kayak. I'm fortunate enough to where I can kind of try kayaks out and do this type of stuff, whereas some people, they can't. Again, that's a review kind of the Terrova and the Hammer combined together. I hope you guys get out there on the water and give it a shot for yourself, and interested to see what your feedback is. All right.